What's up in War Eagle War Report family? It's your guy Ike Jones, and we're back with another morning drop. Today we are talking defensive line. What does Auburn need to do to solidify the trenches on the defensive side? Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. It is Wednesday, January 3rd. Hopefully, everybody is having a great day today and great morning to get in here and talk a little bit more Auburn football. Glad to have you guys dropping in with us. As always, I need you guys to be doing the necessary, and that is sharing the content. We need more people involved in these conversations about Auburn sports right here on the War Report. So share the content with them out there on social media, email them, text message. I don't care as long as you get the word out. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you're out there on podcast re-listening, make sure that you got your notifications on when those drop and sharing that content as well as giving us a 5-star review. Let's get over into the content today. Shouts out first and foremost before we talk about football. Basketball team handled business versus Penn last night, getting into SEC play. I've been promising you guys some basketball content that is on the way. We are doing film reviews over on the channel right now. So we did the first half of the Maryland game, got more of that on the way for you guys that are part of the Green Name game. But one of the things that definitely is there on tape is our defensive line and how we need to do better there, right? Coach Hugh Freeze talked a lot about this past season, why he was reluctant to go tempo as was part of what is his DNA, what brought him to where he is. And this is kind of why I am not as panicky as some Auburn fans are about what the future of Auburn football could potentially be, because I don't feel as if this was really indicative of a Coach Hugh Freeze team. I don't feel like he really had his fingerprint on what was happening on the offense. And so I don't think that that's really indicative of what's going to be going forth in the future. But a big portion of what he talks about is his RPO and his tempo. He said he wouldn't be where he is today if it wasn't for those things in the offense. So I do expect for those things to return in the upcoming season. But a big portion of why he said he was reluctant to do that was about depth along the defensive line. Defensive line coach Jeremy Garrett was brought in this past season, and he was one of the guys that was on the Liberty staff that had a defensive line that was able to generate a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of pressure in the previous season. I think it led the country in one of those statistical categories, whether it was sacks or tackles for loss. And so the Auburn defense needs to get to a place where they're able to do that more consistently. So I think the big focus for Coach Jeremy Garrett is going to be finding more depth along the defensive line. Now, that's not to say that we don't have some talent that's there. You know, I've looked at this roster pretty extensively along the defensive line over the last couple of days, just trying to see who's going to be coming back and where all of that depth needs to come from, because if we're going to be more effective in the kind of offense that Coach Hugh Freeze wants to run, he needs to feel confident that the defensive line is going to be able to do what they need to do consistently, and be able to stand up and rotate and all those things necessary. So the depth along the defensive line is going to be important. One of the guys that I really want to see flourish under the tutelage of Jeremy Garrett is going to be a guy like Quintrell Jamison Travis. We watched the film a little bit yesterday. I thought that he did a really good job in the opportunities that he had about creating pressure and standing up against the run. I think that Coach Garrett needs to kind of figure out how to shuffle the deck a little bit with these guys. I also talked about, if we watch the film, how I think that Jason Jones is actually better suited to move from the nose tackle to a D tackle position. I think he played that a lot in this game versus Maryland, and he actually did well. If you go and watch his film versus Maryland, you'll see he's actually creating pressure. He's actually, getting a lot of push in the run game at the D tackle position, as opposed to kind of he was a forgotten man or a lost man along that defensive line over at the nose tackle position. But because we don't have the depth at nose tackle and his size profile matches there, he's been moved over to play nose tackle. I think Jason Jones would flourish in being able to move over to a D tackle spot. But again, that's a Coach Jeremy Garrett decision about shuffling the deck there. But I think it would serve Jason Jones better, and it would help us along our defensive line as far as depth is concerned at that position. You're going to be losing a lot of depth in this offseason, and particularly you're going to be losing probably your not probably your best defensive lineman as far as the statistics. I mean, I went and I looked this up. Marcus Harris was as far as PFF run grades are concerned, Marcus Harris by a wide margin was the best run defender on run grade. He also led the team in sacks, tackles for loss. He was the only PFF person graded in the top 100 in rush defense along the defensive line. The only one in run defense on our defensive line that was rated in the top 100, and he was the only run defender um, in the PFF grade, that was rated in the top 100 along the defensive line, not counting the jack position or the edge position in pass defense as well. So you're losing a lot when you're losing Marcus Harris. And really, the second best run defender on the team is Lawrence Johnson, who's also going to be leaving for the NFL draft out of eligibility. So you've got a lot of work that you've got to do to be able to replace that productivity. But let's just look a little bit at the run defense specifically, because that is, I think, a big portion of what allows you to be different in the way that you approach your defense is your ability for your defensive line to not need a lot of support in the run consistently. 20th ranked in a rush defense in the country, and third in the SEC, which is good. So we did well against the run. But again, you're losing your top two run defenders in this offseason right now. So you've got to figure out a way to replace that productivity. Not to mention, I mentioned the nose tackle position. I haven't seen anything definitive from him, but Justin Rogers was considering going to the NFL or even potentially, transferring again. So if you lose Justin Rogers at your nose tackle position, now you're in a much different situation. I think one of the biggest keys for Auburn is going to be figuring out that nose tackle position. So Coach Garrett's got his work cut out for him, trying to figure out what are we going to do at the nose tackle position, because, I mean, it's literally centrally located to your defensive line or your defensive units. It is the nucleus of how all of this stuff works. If you've got a good nose tackle, it allows you to be multiple in so many different ways. It changes the way that your linebackers are able to flow downhill versus the run. That nose tackle position is going to be super critical. So they've got to figure out what they're going to be doing there. Again, Justin Rogers is the only guy that's going to be returning that I think is really suited to play the nose tackle position. I get Jason Jones played it a lot, but I actually, again, feel like he's better at the D tackle than he is at nose tackle. So hopefully we can bring in another nose that will allow him to play that D tackle spot a little bit more exclusively coming up in his senior season. But ranked, again, number 20 in the country in rush defense, third in the SEC. In your ability to generate pressure, and this is PFF grades, not what your ranking is as far as like total defense against the run. Your rush defense, I think, in total was number 48 in the country. No, excuse me, 76 in the country, and 11th in the SEC, 13th overall. But PFF grade for the run, 20th in the country, third in the SEC. Ability to generate pressure, according to PFF, 77th ranked in the country and 10th in the SEC. 12th if you add in Texas and Oklahoma, boo. And the only teams ranked behind you in PFF grade for pressure rates were Vandy and Mississippi State. So a lot of work that needs to be done along that defensive line unit and the ability to generate pressure. Again, the pass rush, I think we've talked about it quite a bit. This team wasn't good at generating pass rush if it wasn't blitz related. And that's going to be a big task for Coach Ron Roberts coming up in this next season, is trying to figure out how do we generate a pass rush more consistently. Specifically, how do we do that with just the front four or with just bringing four, whether you're going to be rotating. And that jack position is going to be interesting coming up this year. Right, you're going to have Jalen McLeod coming back. You're going to have the likes of Jamonte Waller coming in. You're going to have some other guys that are slated at linebacker that can come and give you some help out there at the pass rush, a DeMarcus Riddick. But you need to add some more guys to that room in order to be better and and have more depth there. The only guys returning for you at the jack position are going to be Brenton Williams, who is the true freshman, and Jalen McLeod. Brenton Williams didn't see much duty. I don't really know much about what his ability in this. He is 6'3", 262. Jalen McLeod 6'1", 237. Right, so he's a significantly bigger guy. But who is going to be the guy that's in that room in the jack that's going to help you to be a consistent pass rush guy, a guy that that defenses, or excuse me, offensive lines have to slide pressure to, or they've got to keep a running back or tight end in to double team or chip, something like that. A guy that's going to be consistently do that. Jaden McLeod did an excellent job of that. Again, he's a highly rated pass rusher out there. He tied for the team lead in sacks with Marcus Harris, and total sacks. Marcus Harris had more with the combined sacks, but still, Jalen McLeod is a guy who was able to be out there and be a consistent pass rush guy once he came back and was healthy. So looking forward to seeing a full year of a healthy Jalen McLeod out there. But you got to get some more help along your defensive front and your ability to get to the passer. Interior rush, again, Marcus Harris was your primary guy with that. You're losing him. You lose a lot with Marcus Harris's absent from that defensive line. So I think this is priority number. I know everybody is focused on the quarterback position, and with good reason. I don't think that there's any reason that you shouldn't focus on quarterback. But I think that this is probably 1A. Quarterback and defensive line are 1A and 1B when it comes to what the priority needs to be in this offseason. Because that defensive line is what is going to allow you to play the type of offense that Coach Freeze really wants to do. And again, this is Coach Freeze saying himself. His offensive philosophy is about being able to do the RPO and tempo, and he was not comfortable doing that because of the lack of depth at the defensive line. So you got to do better along that defensive front and have more depth. You've got some quality pieces in there. Again, I liked what I saw from Jamison Travis in the bowl game. You did get to see a little bit of Darren Reed during the bowl game. The other guy that you're going to be missing along that defensive front is Mosiah Nasili Kite. Of course, he's been hurt for the vast majority of the season. But when you're losing Nasili Kite, you're losing Marcus Harris, you're losing Lawrence Johnson. That's a lot of rotational snaps that are going to be gone from guys that have played consistently for you up front this season, and an already lacking a defensive line that's already lacking in depth. Keldrick Falk, I like what I saw from him in flashes this season. Looking forward to seeing the progression of him in year two, as both a. Now he disappointed me a little bit in his ability to get to the passer, but I liked what he was able to do against the run. And disappointed, I think, is relative because I just had really high expectations. Not that he did poorly, but he just wasn't the kind of pass rusher that I thought he was going to be coming in. Didn't see a lot of Darren Reed, but he's going to be a guy that's going to get some snaps in year two. Looking forward to seeing what his progress is. Again, I think you got to make sure that not make sure, but you hope that Justin Rogers returns for you. Zeke Walker has another year of eligibility. You hope he comes back and he's going to factor into that race as well. And then again, I think you need to shuffle and move Jason Jones to a different spot along that defensive line in order for him to be better. But then after that, you're going to have to rely on a bunch of freshmen. So when we talk about transfer portal acquisitions, I think the defensive line needs to be a heavy focus of what this team is doing. And then when you talk about the jack position, he hinted at it when we got into bowl practice, but I think Cam Riley, if he's coming back for his senior season to Auburn, needs to move over to be a jack linebacker for Auburn and be able to be a guy that's going to be consistently getting downhill versus a pass. I think that's a better fit for him and his skill set. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Coach Garrett and this defensive staff go out there and attack the transfer portal, specifically when it comes to experienced guys to bring depth in immediately to help you along that defensive front. You already have Gage Keys there that's coming in, but I think that nose tackle position specifically is going to be something that Auburn needs to go out there and find someone that's going to be a good rotational piece to come in and play there. All right, that's enough of me talking about all this stuff. I definitely want to hear what you all have to say about this and how Auburn can get better along the defensive front. So definitely want to hear your thoughts on all of those things. Of course, the morning drop is brought to you by our show sponsor today, The Rogue Shop. Make sure you head over to rogueshop.com using code RAPPORT. If you have any issues with sleep, stress, anxiety, pain, Rogue Shop's got a remedy for you. Rogue Shop is America's #1 online dispensary. Make sure you use code RAPPORT when you go over there. Get a little something off your purchase, and that lets them know that the War Rapport sent you. All right, let's get over into the comment section and see what you guys are talking about. A lot of great things to discuss here when it comes to Auburn's defensive line, and I really want to hear your thoughts about all those things. See a lot of comments in here about Salter and AJ Harris. We will talk more about those things tonight, so I'm not going to dive into them too much this morning. I do want to focus the conversation on defensive line. So tune in tonight to hear thoughts about both of those young men. Let's see here. A lot of comments about Salter and AJ Harris. There we go. Robert Guy jumps in and says, we need to go get them from Michigan. Michigan definitely has built a great defensive line unit. They were up there causing havoc all season and did well in their college football playoff appearance. I do agree that Michigan has done it the correct way. Justin Thomas, not about this defensive line, but saying Derek Brown 3 tackles away from breaking an NFL record for a D tackle. Props to him. This is the kind of guy we need to have up here on our defensive line right now. If we can get a couple more Derek Browns along the defensive line next season, Auburn will be in a really good place. Chris S. jumps in and says, we need more bodies on the D-line if we run tempo and put up 30 points per game. Absolutely. You don't want to be in a position where you're hanging your defensive line out to dry because you don't have enough depth for those guys to play. That's when you start getting into guys potentially getting injured, or you just have poor play when you have to rotate guys in that aren't able to do that. But I do think this is one thing I will say. I do think that we did not do a good enough job of, like, I understand wanting to protect Marcus Harris and his snap count. I just think we should have rotated more guys in more often, even if we felt like there was going to be a drop off in productivity, just to get guys more experience. Because now you're going into year 2 without Marcus Harris here as a defensive line coach with Coach Garrett, without a lot of experience snaps along there. So if you're going to have experience, you've got to go to the portal to do that. And you really didn't cultivate that experience by rotating guys in. Now, we could have done a better job, of course, in some of our cupcake games of getting guys snaps there. But I'm talking about experience versus Power 5 guys. Absent of the Arkansas and Vanderbilt games, you really didn't have an opportunity versus P5 opponents to get young guys snaps in there because you didn't handle business versus some of the P5 opponents that you probably should have blown out. And yes, I'm talking about UCal. But we've got to do a better job of getting that rotation in for those younger guys and getting them snaps. And I'm expecting year 2 to be a year where we see more young guys get opportunities, just because I think that that's a big part of what the selling pitch was for those young men to come at Auburn is you're going to get to be able to come in here and play immediately. So we're going to see more young guys get more snaps. And I do think there are talented young men that didn't get opportunities in this last season. So hopefully we will be able to see that in this coming year. Chris S. says, but then we need a nose tackle somewhere, assuming Rogers declares. We talked about this. I don't know if Justin Rogers is going to declare for the draft or try to go back into the transfer portal, but what I do know is he is really the only true nose tackle that is on this team. And again, that's no disrespect to Jason Jones. I think Jason Jones has actually gotten a bad rep in his years at Auburn for being ineffective. I just think that he's been playing out of position. So when you get Jason Jones in the position he needs to be in, he can be more effective for you. But you have to have somebody. He is out of necessity been playing in that position, I think more so than the skill set and his ability. Jonathan Rogers says, Ike, do you think we get any D-line in the portal? Has anyone heard anything from the big D tackle from Michigan State? Listen, I think you have to go get more defensive linemen in the portal. I don't think it's an option. To build the depth that you need along this defensive line and to get some tutelage for these young guys that you want to come in and play heavy snaps for you, you got to go get some guys out of the portal. So I think that is going to be, again, I think it's priority. If you feel like quarterback is priority 1B, 1A and 1B is defensive line. Like you just, in order for Auburn to be competitive next year, that defensive line unit's got to get more quality depth. Has to. It's just not a question about it. Chris S jumps back in and says, not going to lie, I did not think our D line could get those numbers going into the season. Thought they were going to be the worst group on the team considering what we lost. And I think this is a testament to Coach Garrett. We talked about, you know, what he was as a Liberty defensive line coach. I think he did a really great job of getting that defensive line unit to go in and play better than what a lot of people assume. I even assumed that they were going to be able to play. I as well was concerned about where we were with our defensive line. And here we are going into year two. I'm concerned about where we are with our defensive line. So I like what they were able to produce. Just need more depth so that that offense can be what it needs to be for you in order to put up those points necessary. So, yeah, definitely need to figure that out. What else do we have in here? Chris S jumps back in and says, who do we have on the roster that is 6'2" and 325 plus? Well, let's just take a look at that. 325 plus, you got Jason Jones at 6'6", 330 pounds. I think that is going to, nope, Lawrence Johnson's not going to be here. Zeke Walker's, no. I think that's going to be it besides Justin Rogers, my guy. That's it. Justin Rogers and Jason Jones. That's it. And again, that's why Jason Jones was playing. Like Jamison Travis is 6'4", 320, right? So he's close. But that's it. Those are the only guys. And that's why Jason Jones has been placed at the nose tackle, because he's the only other guy from a size perspective that fits the profile of what you want to be able to have in there as a nose. Again, I just don't think his skill set matches it. So you know, your options are limited with what you have on the roster. You need a run stuffing nose tackle, a guy who's just going to eat up blocks there in the middle. You just need a big body that's going to be able to be the anchor of that defensive line. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to go out and get, he being Jeremy Garrett, in this transfer portal. And listen, Dimitri Nicholas is another guy who was committed to Auburn, who fits the profile of what you would want as a nose tackle. I think if you go out and get a quality nose in the transfer portal and you're able to close the deal with Dimitri Nicholas, you're in a really great spot at your nose tackle for depth, rotation, and potential, buffer against injury, especially considering the fact that you can rotate Jason Jones into that spot if you need to. So if you can go and get a transfer portal guy and you can close the deal with him, you're in a good spot. But you got a lot of work that you got to do to make sure you can get there. Let's see here. Justin Thomas says Coach Hugh Freeze is not good in the portal so far this year. I would say awful. I won't agree with that, because I think that there's a lot left to be done in the transfer portal. And again, he said himself what his focus has been was closing on this freshman class. So I find it difficult. And this is, another, when we get into the nuanced conversation about what Coach Freeze was or could be in the future as a coach, you have to be able to do more than one thing 100%. But the things that he is focused on, he's been excellent at. So he focused on recruiting in this freshman class, excellent at it. He's been focusing on trying to get better in certain areas. He's been excellent at the things he's focused on. Now, I think, and this is what I talked about in earlier drops, it's time for him to shift his focus to some other areas and get those things moving. The question that Auburn fans would ask is, can he be excellent in these areas that he's been deficient in? And why has he not had his focus in those areas? Now, that's a question that you have to ask him. He made a strategic decision to say, I am going to solely focus right here because I think that that is the biggest need right now. I don't question his philosophy about what he focused on. It didn't pay dividends in year one on the scoreboard or in the win-loss column. Understood completely, 100%. You don't feel good about where you are as far as your production on offense and the trajectory of what this offense is doing, or the win-loss column as far as the team is concerned. But he chose to make a concerted focus on getting that freshman class, that recruiting class, to the place where he wanted it to be. Excellent marks there. So when he focuses on a thing, he's done a really good job on that. Now his task, and I said this earlier, is going to be figuring out how to be better in the on the field product in year 2. So if he can shift his focus now that he's gotten the majority of that early signing day class signed, he's only got a few loose ends that he needs to tie up for national signing day. Can he shift his focus now to the transfer portal and what he needs to do to fill in the gaps of what's left right there to get yourself a spring football team that's going to be poised to make a lot of cohesive movements during the spring football time? That's going to be the challenge for Coach Hugh Freeze and this staff right now, is shifting that focus over in that direction. And listen, I think we actually did really well along the defensive fronts in the transfer portal in year 1 under Coach Hugh Freeze. And a lot of that was late momentum. It wasn't early momentum when they first got in there. Now, it was pretty quick turnaround for them to do that. But again, they did the same thing last year, focused on closing out the early signing day period, then turned their attention to the transfer portal. I'm going to trust that process because I liked the results from last year of what they did. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be able to do in year 2. So definitely a lot to be sorted out, but I think that Coach Freeze has a plan in place. Just got to trust that that plan is going to be actually something that comes to fruition in the way that Auburn fans are going to be happy about. A lot yet left to be decided there in that regard. But again, I am not hitting the panic button on that just yet. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. All right, that's it, man. That's all I got for y'all. We will be back at you all tonight. Again, the sponsor for today's morning drop is the Rogue Shop. Make sure you head over to there, America's #1 online dispensary, using code RAPPORT when you get over there. Like the video before you get out of here. Subscribe to the channel. Share the content with somebody. Again, we'll be back at you all tonight with another edition of the Midweek Report, talking a little bit more quarterback, talking a little bit more some of everything, defensive back, whatever y'all want to talk about. We'll talk some basketball, all of those things. We'll see you guys then. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.
Drop.